Did you get yourself a gig? Oh my gosh. That's great. You're probably gonna lose it. I'm just kidding, you're gonna keep it. No, you're probably gonna lose it. All right, so the truth is, we're all gonna lose our gigs. I've lost a ton of gigs over the years. It's usually not your fault. Most of the time it's the freaking owner. We love live music. We support all local art. Yeah, I'll tell you the truth, we just don't have the money. Nothing personal, and usually it's not personal. But if there are some things you can do to keep your gig, you gotta do them. So I'm gonna show you what I've learned. That's right, my first tip for you is to read your audience. I personally think that this is the biggest key to keeping your gig. I don't want to totally suggest that you stereotype your audience as you see them walk in and sit down, but a little bit you do. I had a gig at a club called Bobby London for about 7 years, and when I took that gig, I was a jazz musician, go get 'em jazzer. And every time I would go to that gig, and the clientele, I think I've mentioned it before, middle-aged Korean men, almost entirely, they only requested 70s love songs. And on my high horse, at the beginning, I would say, I'm sorry, I'm a jazz musician, I don't play that song. I maybe only did that once, and I'm glad, because I kept the gig for 7 years. Now, the thing I had to realize was that now that I needed some money, and I had this paying gig, I couldn't afford to be a jazz snob anymore. So they asked me to play Desperado by the Eagles, like every week. That's one of the most requested songs by middle-aged Korean men. I've just learned it. So I decided I was gonna learn to play the best version of Desperado I could, and I've made it interesting to myself. I'm not saying there's not gonna be the occasional night where you're not gonna get, a 50-year-old Korean man that won't come up to you and say, could you play Solar by Miles Davis? Because it actually happened one time in 7 years. But it did happen one time, so, occasionally. Well, it's interesting enough. You've got to come down from your high horse, though. There's no room for you saying you're a pure jazz musician anymore. You got to pay the bills. So sometimes the owner would come out and he would sit down next to these guys requesting songs, and he was impressed if I could play the songs that they asked for. So when I saw that, I decided it's a good thing. Lucky for me, I've always kind of been an avid radio listener, so I know a ton of songs. But if you don't feel like you know a ton of songs and you've landed a gig, this is a good goal for you. Just learn a tune a week. Every week, learn a tune, and learn a tune from a different decade. If you see a group of teenagers walk in and sit down and you've got a Drake song under your belt, nice. Now, it's not like the teenagers are gonna leave a huge tip, but it's helpful. And sometimes they Snapchat you to their friends. Elderly people can be a little bit tricky. You have to pay attention to little intricacies of their outfits and their haircuts. So to me, if I see some older people walk in, say a couple, and they look kind of refined, I'm gonna go for Night and Day, Cole Porter, or I'm gonna play Fly Me to the Moon, something that they heard Frank Sinatra sing. But you can get the older person who has a little bit longer hair. I mean, just a little bit longer hair is the difference between Frank Sinatra and Bob Dylan, right? Or the difference between Tony Bennett and The Doors. Older people today, they didn't grow up in the 20s anymore. We've got people that are starting to look old, and I'm going to be one of them pretty soon. They probably were listening to rock and roll in the 60s. So that's kind of cool. You can learn, songs from the 60s for the old people. It's good. You know that it would be untrue. You know that I would be a liar. One of my favorites. And you've got to watch watch them too for cues, because if they just go on with their conversation and they don't pay any attention to you, you didn't hit the right button. So if your Doors song doesn't work, you try something else. Maybe Johnny Cash. You never know. You try different things and you watch them, and you can tell they start to tap their fingers, they start to bob their heads, they'll sing along, they'll turn in your direction, they'll give you a little nod. One of my coolest moments happened not very long ago. There were 4 people that came, and they had sat down to dinner. They were kind of maybe in their 60s, and there was a black couple and a white couple, and they were sitting together having dinner. And I tried everything and I couldn't appeal to them. And I just had a hunch that maybe this song that my grandma taught me when I was little might strike a chord. And so I launched into, I am weak, but thou art strong. And sure enough, the ladies eating dinner, Jesus, keep me from all wrong. And I got one of these. Made eye contact, and when she and her husband were leaving, she gave him a little nudge, and he dropped some dough in my jar. Thank you, Grandma. So read your audience. Tip number 1, to keep the gig. Let's look at tip number 2. Now that should be common sense, right? Be cool to people. Learn their names. Learn the names of the bussers, the waiters, the bartenders, the chefs. Learn their names. Learn about them. Ask them little things about themselves. Just, people skills. And then if the owner ever tries to get rid of you, he might ask their opinions. And if they're like, don't get rid of Aimee, she's the best, that's what you want. And then just little things too. Like maybe the owner wants you to come in a half hour early, and so she emails you during the week. Get back to her like within an hour, like be quick like that. And little things like offering to, a lot of times they'll have house music playing. Usually these days it's just on an iPhone plugged into the house system. Maybe it's the waiter that has to turn that off every time you sit down to play, and you could just offer to do it for him so that he doesn't have to. Just little things like that, they're going to go a long way. Oh, and for Pete's sake, be on time. Nobody's going to hire you if you don't come on time. So for somebody like me who just has to sit down at a piano and maybe set up my mic, like I'm always 15 minutes early. If I'm bringing my keyboard, I'm going to be about 40 minutes early. And if you're ever going to be late, call somebody and let them know. Just say, I'm running 10 minutes late. But my gosh, don't let that happen like more than 2 times a year. You be on time. Yeah, so it's not rocket science. You just be cool to people. Let's look at the next tip. Shh. It's become a goal of mine at every gig to never have the owner or the manager or anybody ask me to turn down. So that's the goal. It means you start quietly, and you can kind of read it, but tell you what, if the manager walks in while you're playing, every time, because that's what he's listening for. He's going to be looking at the room, seeing if people are doing this to each other when they're trying to have conversations. He's also noticing if people want to sit near the piano or near the band. Like maybe they come in and they hear the music and they're like, I want to sit back there. Do you have a booth available? And he notices that. So you got to make sure too, when people walk in, and you can kind of read it too, like if it's getting toward the end of the night and there aren't many people left and they're sitting far away from you and they kind of seem to be digging you, like you can kind of feel it, you can turn it up a little bit, fill the room with your sound. Like sometimes people really like that, and you can tell. And as the night, moves along, gets to be toward like 10:30, 11 or whatever, the manager, he's probably had a couple, and he's going to be much looser. I almost lost you there. Okay, that brings me to another point. Don't drink too much. Holy moly, musicians can drink. Yeah, if you're a drinker, you limit yourself 1 or 2 beers, maybe half a glass of wine, something like that, because nobody's gonna hire the boozing musician. Remember it. Now, I don't drink, so that one's not a problem for me. I've always got water with me, and if people ask to buy me a drink or whatever, that happens quite a bit. I just say, oh, I'm sorry, I like to only have water when I'm singing. Works great. All right, let's look at our next tip. One time I'm at my Bobby London gig with my buddies Roger and Mike, and we're sitting up there on the bandstand, and this guy is at the bar and he's getting kind of tipsy, and he says, can you play Hootie and the Blowfish? And that one, I'm never gonna play Hootie and the Blowfish for you. You can ask me 10 million times and you can put $100, no, well, maybe $100. I might do it. But he wanted to hear, only wanna be with you. That's what he wanted to hear. And so we had to say, sorry, man, we don't know that one. And you know what he did? He got up and he walked around and he snuck right up behind me. He's like right over my shoulder going, I know how to play Hootie. Scoot over, let me play Hootie. Anyway, know your boundaries. And so I said, Mike, go get the owner. So he walked around back, he got the owner came, whew, took care of that one. But yeah, random people are not allowed to come play your instrument. They're not allowed to take your microphone. They're not allowed to give a shout out to their friends. They're not allowed to sing happy birthday. Nothing like that. You have to know your boundaries. And you are also not a personal jukebox. If somebody requests a song and you play it for them and they don't give you a tip and they ask you for another one, it's okay to tell them you don't know it. If they want you to play their songs, they've got to put money in your jar. In your head, someday. You need about $10 to do that one. All right, Aimee, what's the next one? You, my friend, are not at your gig to impress people with your mad skills, with your serious chops, with your killing licks. No, you're there to make them feel something while they eat dinner. So let's say you're playing a beautiful jazz standard, you're playing All the Things You Are. Of course, you've got to get through the head, right? You got to sing it once or play it once. You need to take a solo. But if I'm gonna sing a solo on All the Things You Are in front of people who are eating dinner and not really paying attention to me, the solo is not the time that I want them to stop doing this and start doing this. It's not gonna happen. It's not why you're there. So when I start to sing a solo on All the Things You Are, it's gonna be more like da 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 da, something that is gonna make them keep doing this. You bust out with and you're gonna lose your gig. Let's say you're an instrumentalist. You gotta think like your Stan Getz instead of like your Sun Ra, all right? You need to make the most beautiful sounds. A little vibrato, some long notes, use some space. Anything you can do to make a beautiful solo so that people don't think that you're nuts. Yeah, that's basically the goal. Don't make people think you're nuts. Because if you play like a monster, they won't know what the heck you're doing. These guys don't listen to jazz every day like you do. In fact, a good 99% of the population of the world don't listen to jazz every day like you do. You got to play to these people, right? Zombie, zombie. So that's it. Those are my tips. Good job. If you got the gig, try your hardest to keep the gig. If the owner has to give you the boot, don't make it be your fault. And you never know too. I've lost a gig before because the restaurant has financial trouble, and then the owner gets on his feet again and calls me up for his new restaurant and says, would you like to play? So, don't burn bridges either. If you lose your gig, do it with a smile on your face if you can, might just get you your next gig. Thanks for watching Aimee Nolte Music. It was fun to talk to you about how to keep the gig. Please subscribe and share. Everybody have a great day.